Hello, and welcome to Autism Network Scotland Online. Each month, we're going to be running with a monthly theme, and this month is Autism and Aging Well. So today we're having a brief conversation with one of my colleagues, Lynsey. I'll allow Lynsey to introduce herself and tell you a bit more about what she does.
Thanks. My name's Lynsey Stewart and I am the Team Capacity Builder and Network Coordinator with Autism Network Scotland. My role covers lots of areas, but one of the topics that I kind of lead on is autism and ageing. And I work very closely with Neil on this topic, and we work together to develop a report about autism and ageing, which we're going to talk about today.
Can you tell me a wee bit about the background of the Autism and Aging report, where it came from and why it was done and what sort of things we found out?
Yeah, so the background to the report, in the Scottish Government Autism Strategy Refreshed Priorities, one of the points in that was to find out more about autism and ageing. So when Scottish Government did a wider engagement exercise where they went round the country speaking to autistic people and their families and also practitioners, one of the things that came up was that we don't know enough about autism and ageing. We don't know enough about what the impact of ageing on autistic people might be, and that we need to know more about it. So that was kind of the basis of why we wanted to do this exploratory report, was just to get a little bit more information about the picture around the country.
Excellent. And you know, obviously, as we wrote this report, we sort of drew on the experience of autistic individuals and spoke to them and their families. Was that of particular interest? I mean, did you feel that was key to getting a good understanding of how it affects?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only way we're going to find things out is by speaking to autistic people, and by autistic people being at the heart of what we're doing and leading with us on what we're doing. So the kind of key group of people that we wanted to speak to was autistic people, to hear about their experiences of ageing. We also spoke to parents and carers as well, because that's another group of people that it's important to hear their experiences. And then we also spoke to practitioners as part of that group as well. But definitely our kind of key demographic was autistic people. I don't know what you felt about that, about the importance of you know, including or making sure that the views we heard were mainly autistic people's.
Yes, I mean, I always come down on the side of, when you're doing any kind of informative piece, to get all angles is ideal. So as we did, you know, going to the likes of Age UK or Age Scotland and other professionals, and then autistic individuals, to get all points of view rather than just sort of focusing on one and saying, well, a professional can tell me what autistic people think because they deal with them every day. So yeah, to me, and it also gives a sense of ownership and a sense of inclusion to the autistic community if they're involved in the research. And as we'll discuss later, you know, any plans going forward from the piece that we wrote. So I suppose moving on then, what were the key findings of the report? You know, what did we sort of feel was the key takeaways from what we wrote?
So there was kind of a number of areas that came up as being of importance. The main one was just that person-centred planning and planning for the future in a person-centred way. That was kind of one of the key points that most people raised in one way or another, that really it all just comes down to person-centred good support. And also the importance of engaging with autistic people throughout anything that's being done, the importance of that engagement. one of the things that was felt to kind of be lacking at the moment was knowledge of autism amongst general healthcare practitioners. So we know that as you age, you're perhaps more likely to need more input from healthcare services. And also you have to go for more routine checkups and appointments and things. And we kind of heard from people that maybe the understanding and acceptance of autism amongst those kind of healthcare practitioners could be greater, and just the awareness of the impact of, say, going for a mammogram or a blood test, all of the different impacts that that might have for an autistic person. Social isolation was another key point that came up, and that older autistic people saying that they felt more socially isolated, and that they were in a position maybe where some of the social groups for autistic people were for younger autistic people, and they felt that they couldn't access them, and some of the groups or activities for older people maybe didn't have the awareness or the accessibility for autistic people. The importance of parents and carers getting support as parents and carers age as well, and planning for the future. Autistic people needing good quality accessible information about how to age well, and about how they can support themselves to age well. And a few people kind of felt that the kind of aging well information that is available was maybe not in a particularly accessible format, and maybe quite confusing. So better information. The menopause actually came up quite a lot as well, and just the impact of the menopause for autistic women, and what the impacts, all the various impacts, the sensory changes, the emotional changes, everything that comes along with that, and there needing to be more awareness and understanding. And then a lot about diagnosis. So as well as hearing from autistic people who had been diagnosed earlier in life, and then we also heard from older autistic people who had maybe been diagnosed very late in life. So that need for good diagnostic pathways, and also a need for professionals to recognise that even later in life diagnosis of autism, it might be it could be that it's an autism diagnosis that's needed, and not to just rule it out because the person was older. Focus on well-being. Employment was another one that came up. Employment and supporting people with retirement, and just the general concept that we need more research. So yeah, quite a long list actually, but all really important, relevant points. What did you think? What were the kind of key messages that you took away?
To me, the biggest thing that I kind of not learned but better understood was, a lot of older people struggle with things like social isolation and a lack of company, and a lack of people, loneliness and feelings of depression and anxiety, because they don't have the sort of same social networks as maybe younger people do. And the impact that autism has on that is it just makes it 10 times worse, because at least a lot of older people have at some point had a larger social network, whereas typically autistic individuals can be very closed off from society. And some are very happy with that, some not so much. And it's that issue of how much is that going to exacerbate the typical issues that elderly people feel, because they haven't had it at that point.
I think you're right, and I think what you're saying there as well about the differences in different people's experiences, I think that's really important, because some people were saying, I don't want to be forced into a social situation, I don't want to go to social groups specifically for older autistic people, that's not what I want. So I think, again, that comes down to person-centered approach, doesn't it? But that understanding that for everyone what social inclusion means to them will be different. and getting to understand that and then provide opportunities in the way that works for them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's part of the reason our conference is focusing on issues like this. To me, the human rights paradigm is where do you go when you've got people who think, I know what's best. The best interest of this individual is to socialize more and to join some groups, so they reduce that feeling of loneliness, depression, anxiety, all the rest of it, against their rights as an individual to decide how they live their own life. And
Yeah,
it's not an easy question to answer.
Social contact, or they might want it in a different way. It might be online, it might be telephone, it doesn't necessarily have to be meeting up with a group of people. But yeah, I think just the importance of that individual being able to make their own voice heard about, this is what I want and this is what's important to me in relation to any of the things we're talking about, really. But I think particularly that kind of social inclusion.
Very much so, very much so. So just moving on from that, obviously pre-lockdown we'd organised, or we'd thought about running some sort of pilots to try and address some of the issues we've discussed today. Can you tell us a bit more about that and where we're at with that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lockdown has changed everything, but I think what we're keen to do, the kind of areas that we're keen to look at is hearing more from autistic people. So we want to do a lot more work alongside autistic people to hear about their experiences, but also hear about what they want to happen next, because, you know, we've written the report and come up with recommendations, but we need to find out actually what autistic people want to happen next and what they think the priorities are, and to be fully involved in all of that. So there's a couple of plans happening that will hopefully come into fruition soon, just looking at different ways of engaging with autistic people on this topic. Looking at partnering with other organisations. So there are organisations doing some really good work for older people, like Age Scotland, Age UK, and places like that, and they already have a huge amount of resources and information and support. So looking at how can we make them accessible to autistic people rather than recreating something that's already there, how can we partner with existing organisations to kind of combine the two areas to produce something or make more resources. And then that kind of idea of general healthcare staff having more awareness of autism and the way autism might impact on people accessing their services, and how they can make services, appointments, clinics, whatever it might be, more accessible. So some kind of workshop where we work with local healthcare practitioners and autistic people again, to kind of do that general autism awareness, but with that kind of focus on aging specifically. And then I guess working with local autism leads and people in the health and social care partnerships who are responsible for planning for older people. Again, we need to be speaking to both groups to look at how do the two areas combine, and where are the pathways within that for older autistic people. So that's some of our ideas. One of the main things that I'm really keen to do is just to hear more from older autistic people about their experiences. I think that's pretty much the most important part of this, and we've already had a few people get in touch with us and just share their life experiences with us, which is absolutely amazing, because that's the way we're going to learn, and that's how we're going to get things to change, is hearing from people who have actually had these life experiences. What do you think? What kind of bit of the plan are you most looking forward to working on?
I suppose to me, partnering with other people, I always feel you get the best results I know many people say too many cooks spoil the broth, but you need more than just one person, or otherwise you just get one point of view on it. And bringing in the autistic voice, obviously I'm autistic, but bring in other autistic voices who may be a bit closer to old age than I am, and to bring in some professionals and to bring in third sector organizations, and then work together to create something that really can make a difference in the life of autistic people. A lot of people talk about it. It looks really good on paper, and then very little ever comes of it, and the information slowly peters out after about a month or so with very little. And then you find that the majority, if there has been any funding, hasn't been spent actually helping people. It's kind of been spent on all the admin surrounding it, which to me often isn't the best. So to actually be involved in a project and to see how we can do this without the usual problems of funding not going to the most relevant area. And I suppose the other thing for me as well is training. I think too many people, we've discussed it in team meetings and things, and too many people think they're autism aware without being. And to me, almost on a project like this, especially older people who are a bit more vulnerable, may have communication difficulties, may have sight difficulties, hearing loss, etc., or could have other issues that you get in old age, such as Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, that can really limit their ability to interact with other people. That they actually, to me, almost should go above just a sort of aware to the actual knowledgeable. So to me, awareness is we're aware, we understand, we are aware, we know what to do, very basically. But knowledgeable says, well, we know that, but we also know meltdowns can happen. Let's see if we can see how meltdowns do happen. Let's see what we can do to prevent them, to address them better. It's just a deeper understanding of the individual. And to me, especially with medical professionals or, nursing homes or home health, for example, is a great one. People going in to houses to support older people have to understand autism. And not just understand it, but know it very well and be knowledgeable about how to interact and deal. Because it's not fair on the individual either. It's not fair on the professional working if they don't have a really good, deep understanding.
Yeah.
Plus, also, it's always another feather in your cap.
It's a really good point, actually. Even just like a home help or a carer coming in to a person's home environment and, moving their stuff or changing things in the house, or just the way they communicate with that person. Absolutely. I think you're
and I think it's certainly a lot more possible now than it used to be, with the sort of move towards direct payment and personal choice in terms of support workers and carers, and older people or their families being able to employ, get the money direct from the council and employ somebody rather than getting the money and going to, a care company who might send in, you might have a different carer every day of the week, which is no good. I mean, if you've got an elderly person with dementia, it's bad enough. If you've got an elderly person with dementia and autism, that's just going to send them into overload, Yeah.
And I think as well, we've got pools of staff and carers and workers who do have the autism knowledge. We also have pools of staff and carers and workers who have the knowledge of aging and how to support older people, but we don't have a pool of people, or a big pool of people, because there will be some people, but we don't have a big pool of people who have both the knowledge of both areas. And I think if we can expand that pool so that there are more people who have the knowledge in both areas, that would be really helpful.
Definitely. I mean, that's the ultimate to go for. My big concern always is, and what I'm hoping to be able to do as being part of it, is to make sure that the training is good enough that people don't make the mistake of deciding they know they're all there is to know, when actually they know the very basic general one-day guide to autism and the one-day guide to old age and think they're experts and they're not really. That can, because what it does is it's not their fault. They think we've been trained so we know what to do. But actually, they've not been trained as much as somebody who's spent 30 years working, looking after the elderly, or somebody who spent 30 years working with autistic individuals.
And also a lot of people who have had that one day training or the one course won't have heard from autistic people. They'll have been trained by a trainer, but they probably won't have actually had any training or awareness or interaction with autistic people, giving them that knowledge. And so hopefully that's something else that we can change.
Definitely, hopefully. So that's all very interesting and a good sort of basic whiz through aging and what we're doing on aging this month. So
yeah, and I think for me, I think we've been talking about autism and aging for such a long time, and I've heard lots of people say, yeah, we need to know more about autism and aging, we need to do more. And I think we've been talking about it for a long time, and it's good that now we are actually moving forward and doing something rather than just talking about it.
To me as well, my big worry is, this is almost shooting myself in the foot when I work for an organization and I do, a fair amount of research and things. But I don't think we need big funded research into autism and aging. I don't think we need loads of money spent. If money's going to be made available, far better to go into training people and into campaigns like the Understanding Autism, so people better understand how to help, and into service provision and supporting smaller organizations with service provision, than going into doing a 10-year or a 5-year big research project into autism and aging.
Research is important if it has a practical output or a practical benefit, not just research for research's sake.
Well, thank you very much for that, Lynsey. And it's been very interesting to talk to you this afternoon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.